Police raid Joseph Muscat's home and seize his phone in corruption investigation. Major congestion in Mars after tree collapses on vehicle. And every single company owned by PL and PN are late in filing their accounts. Find out more on today's episode of Lovin Daily. Good evening, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm your host, Lorenzo Urpani, and with me is Tim Diacono. Later on in this episode, we have an interview with Juventus Academy coach Lorenzo Grossi. But before that, it's been one heck of an afternoon. As far as headlines go, and there's only really one headline that we're talking about, so take it away, Tim.
Yes, which is, of course, the fact that Joseph Muscat got raided by the police this morning. Police entered his home in Bulmarat around 7 a.m. They took a bunch of documents, they took his mobile phone, they took his wife's phone, his children's phones, and they spent around 3 hours there. Now, Muscat was quite open, or at least he spoke up. He was quite open in what happened this morning. He confirmed that this raid was part of a magisterial inquiry into the controversial Vitals Global Healthcare deal, an inquiry that was requested by the Group Republica a few years ago. Now, Vitals Global Healthcare, it's one of the biggest scandals that rocked the Joseph Muscat government. It was when the government sold three public hospitals, St. Luke's, Grech, and the Gozo Hospital, to a private company, Vitals Global Healthcare, run by a group of businessmen who didn't have any experience in running hospitals, and there was always been lots of doubts about this contract, especially since they never really delivered much at all. In fact, they ended up collapsing. They couldn't even pay their staff, and they ended up having to sell to Stewart Healthcare, an American company which still runs the hospitals till this day. Now, where does Joseph Muscat come into this? Now, according to what he said, this was the police wanted to know about his relationship with a certain company called Diacono AG. Now, if you remember, back in November, it was revealed by the Times of Malta, unless I'm mistaken, that shortly after Muscat resigned as Prime Minister in November December 2019, he received two payments from this company, Diacono AG, which is owned by a lawyer called Urpani. And this same company is linked to the hospital's deal because it had received some millions of euro prior, of course, to Joseph Muscat's consultancy. And the largest payment was a 2.49 million euro payment on 20th February 2018. And this was the exact same day that Stewart had completed its purchase of hospitals from VGH. So there was still some kind of relationship there between Wasai Bate's company and Stewart Healthcare. The Financial Crimes Police were clearly looking into this. And then shortly after Joseph Muscat resigned, the same company engaged him as a consultant, apparently, we don't know for what, and paid him 60,000 euro. Muscat has said there was nothing illicit at all in all of this, that he paid taxes on his income, that he actually prepared, that as soon as the story came out in November, he prepared a file with all the necessary documentation, the projects that he had consulted on, the trips he had taken around the world. Not only in case the police can't come, but he also said that he filed a court application in front of the magistrate, Gabriella Vella, saying, look, I want to testify in front of this inquiry. And according to Muscat's version of events, the magistrate never got back to him, and then this happened. Now, this is where it starts to get a bit grey, because Muscat said that he called out the magistrate and the police for not accepting his personal invitation to testify in front of them, by saying that this is showing that they've chosen the part of theatrics, that they wanted to make a scene by sending out the message that, look, there are police outside Joseph Muscat's home. They entered. He said somehow Jason Azzopardi had known in advance. Somehow the Times of Malta were there waiting, informed in advance. And he's saying that someone wanted to send a message. He didn't say who that someone was. He also was very critical of the police for the manner in which they seized his children's phones, saying these are 14-year-old children. If there's anything, maybe he joked, it's a bit out of place. I feel that if you find who their boyfriend is, you can tell me. So trying to, at least on the face of it, pretend that it's not, that this isn't concerning him much. But he interestingly published a video on his Facebook page shortly after the news was published by the Times that about this raid and what's entailed, where he said all of this. It's notable because it's the first time since resigning as Prime Minister that Muscat released a video on his Facebook page, and he said that there's actually more to come. That he's going to be he stayed silent for a while, and then he issued what appeared to be a veiled threat, and we're going to listen to it now.
Nkun għamilt sentejn provajt noqgħod għall-kwit kemm jista' jkun, forsi nibdew it-tielet sena nagħmlu iktar storbju, nitkellem naqra iktar permezz tal-internet, imma anke wiċċ imwiċċ, anke wiċċ imwiċċ man-nies magħkom nintaqgħu flimkien għaliex nerġa' ngħid dak kollu li għamilt tal-pajjiżi għamiltu bl-aqwa intenzjoni.
So yes, there's Joseph Muscat saying, it's my birthday this coming Saturday, I can start a new page, I've stayed quiet these past 2 years, the next year I'm going to be way more noisy, and I will not only speak to you online through videos like this, but face to face. So this really does sound as though he is threatening or hinting at some kind of either come back to politics or come back to some form of public life. The fact that he was saying, I'm going to be meeting people. Now, what it means and what he's going to say, saying I want to be very vocal about something, about what? And also how it's taken by Robert Abela, his successor, and the Labour Party remains to be seen. It concludes, well, it's part of a tough week for the health ministry. Besides the ongoing pandemic, there's also been revelations on a contract given to Carmen Chantar, who is a close political campaigner of Health Minister Chris Fern. She's earning around €163,000 for her role as CEO of a foundation, and this garnered quite a lot of controversy. Now the health ministry is back in the news for all the wrong reasons again.
Yeah, there's definitely so much to chew on in that video, that Joseph Muscat published just over an hour ago. It's 8.5 minutes, and there's at least 3 headlines in there of all the things that are implied, all the things that aren't, all the reading between the lines that can be made, and I mean, this is definitely not the last. He has said it himself that this is, even though it is the first in a very long time that he's uploaded a video on Facebook, it definitely looks like it's not the last, and as he himself hinted that it's his birthday on Saturday, so this might be the beginning of a new chapter. It's quite interesting that yesterday there was Roberta Metzola's birthday, so it seems like these two politicians on very different sides of the aisle will be celebrating slightly different birthdays throughout this week. Meanwhile, while the police raid on Joseph Muscat's house was happening, there was a little bit of chaos in the streets of Marsa this morning when major congestion was triggered just before 9 a.m., so in the middle of all that morning traffic, because of a tree that fell on a car as it was driving through the area. Photos published by numerous news houses, including Lovin Malta, showed the extent of the damage on this car, which, well, unluckily happened to be the one driving under the very large tree, a very major part of which just collapsed onto this car. On the scene, so this happened at around 8:40 a.m. and on the scene, some photos even captured photos of a woman that could be seen, being carried on a stretcher away from the accident. Later, we found out that this was in fact the 50-year-old woman who was driving from Birgu. She has been hospitalized. Her condition remains to be seen. She didn't look like she was, thankfully, she didn't look like the situation was that bad, considering how much worse it could have been and how much worse we know it's been before when, we've had these trees collapse, these large old trees collapse. It is believed that the tree may have fallen after a large vehicle clipped the tree's branches as it passed just before the car. In fact, there were photos of what looked like potentially the vehicle before it, a large truck. We also published some videos on Lovin Malta and over on our Instagram and TikTok pages of the extent of the congestion. The congestion started from Deċembru 13 all the way up to Cordine, because this happened right between those two locations. We even saw photos, of traffic being redirected and passing the wrong way in these main areas. So it was quite chaotic on Malta's roads. It seemed like, thankfully, it could have been worse, but it wasn't. Remains to be seen. Of course, the conversation instantly switched to whether more trees should be chopped up in the area, but I think we've seen enough victims of that. Meanwhile, of course, definitely stay safe out there.
Yes, and finally, not a single company owned by the Labour Party or the Nationalist Party is in line with the law requiring companies to file their audited accounts every year. So Lovin Malta has already widely reported on how Media Link and One Productions, the companies which own Net and One, have not filed their accounts in several years, Media Link since 2003 and One since 2010. However, an analysis by the Shift News of records in the Malta Business Registry has found that this practice of not obeying the law goes deeper than the media companies. In fact, the Labour Party's 6 active companies are all late in filing their accounts, and the main company, MLP Holdings Limited, has last filed theirs back in the year 2000. That's 22 years ago, at the start of the millennium. The situation is similar with the Nationalist Party's companies, and besides Media Link, its travel agency company Eurotours hasn't filed its accounts since 2010. A new company, Resolve Company Limited, is a bit more up to date and filed theirs last in 2018. So both party leaders, Prime Minister Robert Abel and PN leader Bernard Grech, in recent days have pledged or reiterated their pledge, let's say, to sort out the situation, at least in terms of the media companies, but without giving any kind of timeline. This is, I feel, completely outrageous, especially since we recently had the two political parties making this whole fuss about David Take being late to pay his VAT, and not filing his company accounts, and especially since we have Finance Minister Clyde Caruana warning businesses that this is going on a warpath against those who are late in paying, who are paying the taxes and who are following the law. So the fact that the establishment can feel that they do whatever they want without any consequences it doesn't rub well with you.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely shocking. You know, I mean, we're seeing dates that, like, last time some of these companies filed their accounts, I was 10 years old. Some of our viewers weren't even born. This is how bad the situation is getting. Of course, just as Tim mentioned, you know, Lovin Malta has been on this case for a couple of years now. Lovin Malta's Cacciaturi, you know, is still fighting to try and stop the what is essentially the political class breaking the law. The campaign had started out by, you know, highlighting the worrying impartiality of both Net and One, and even the fact that, like we've mentioned before, they're both broke and they haven't published, you know, their accounts for over a decade. But clearly now, as we're starting to see, the problem lies even deeper, and the Net and One, you know, are just the tip of the iceberg. So if you want to stay updated and if you want to find out how you can contribute, just head on over to cacciaturi.com, and that is where you will find out more information, because, as we've just mentioned, this fight is still ongoing and there's still quite a lot. So that brings us to the end of today's episode of Lovin Daily, but stay tuned, because right after this we're going to be heading over to an interview with Juventus Academy coach Lorenzo Grossi, featuring Lovin Malta's newest face and journalist, who I'm sure you'll start seeing more of very soon, Gianluca Barbara. Thank you, have an evening full of Lovin.
Hey guys, this is Gianluca from Lovin Malta. I'm super excited. With us today we have Mr. Lorenzo Grossi, all the way from Italy. He's here overseeing the Juventus Youth Academy that is stationed here in Malta, but he oversees many other academies stationed all across Europe. Mr. Grossi, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance today. Thank you for being here today. You've been here for around about a week. What's your take on the general level here in the youth camp that you set up here?
Thank you to you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. So I start my visit here in Malta. It's the first time, because we have the academy from September. So I'm watching and checking the players here, doing training and something to transfer our methodology to the players. I'm very happy because I have found a very good level, overall very good attitude to improve. And this is the first point that we need to work together. So it was very, very good.
And from the people that you've seen, has there been anyone to show some extraordinary potential, that's something extra that you say this guy could make it to the top?
But until this moment, I observe overall young player, means from, 6-year-old to 12-year-old. So they are very young. In general, there are some players with potential. We need just to know how they grow up. Because usually in all European countries we find a lot of players with a lot of potential, but then change when they grow up. So it's important to follow them in the good way, to give the chance to arrive at the best level for them.
Perfect. And I won't lie, in Malta we're very big on football. We love watching football, local and especially international football. But sometimes we get a bit disappointed because our teams don't really show the results we want to see abroad on the international stage. Do you think there's anything getting in the way of us taking that jump? Do you think there's anything we need to do to improve, to take our game to the next level generally? Is it like funding?
It's not easy to know because I need to know better the culture, how the football works, but in generally when they are young they have potential. It depends how they grow, how the coach make training with them, the level, because in Italy, for example, we have a lot of professional team. So when we find some kids with potential, 10 years old, go to play in professional club, so they start to play another kind of level. Okay, so with player on the same level. But imagine, Italy has 60 million of people, and Malta is, I don't know, half a million. So it starts to be different. Yeah. I think there will be the chance to create more football player.
But in this context, because you mentioned Italy, they can move on to that professional level way easier. In Malta, is going abroad necessary, or do we need to go abroad to get to that professional level, to improve personally?
Allora, in according to the situation now, I think so. I think so, but it's not just my suggestion for Malta, but for a lot of countries, because I have found very good player, young player, 10 years old. Then what happens when they arrive at 14 years old? In that moment, miss the next step to play a higher level. Because usually you don't find the right club, you don't find players like you. So how many talents you have? Probably the talents need to have the chance, 14 years old, 16-year-old, to move in another country maybe. Or could be if the movement, soccer movement, football movement here grow up, why not?
It could be done locally.
Yeah, of course, will be better.
In fact, in this, because you mentioned 14, 16, would you say that this is the sort of key age group, like as a person who is no stranger to potential in football? Would you say that 14 to 16 is sort of like that age group where you say that this guy could be a star, this guy could take it to the top?
But I think 14, 16 is better to understand if can arrive to play like in the professionist club. Then, as you know, there is different kind of level. So you can play Serie A, Serie B or Lega Pro, it's different. But 16-year-old, I think it's time to understand if they can arrive at that kind of level. Which one is not sure. Because there is not only physical or technical skills they need, but mentally overall.
Perfect. In fact, when it comes to 16-year-olds, we have a 17-year-old we're very proud of. Abroad we have Hailey Bugeja, she's playing with Sassuolo Femminile. They're currently tied second with Roma in the league. Have you heard of Hailey? Is there a general outlook of Italy for our young Hailey Bugeja? We've been following her for some time.
First of all, Juventus too, the movement or human movement is growing up a lot, no? So we are at the first place, but not just only this, we are in the Champions League good level. So Juventus want to invest in this project, and I know her because she's very famous in Italy, because she's very young, but she's very, very good player. So I hope maybe one day, I don't know, if we'll play maybe with us or maybe for another good team.
I would love to see her play for Juventus. I would love to see her play for Juventus. In fact, I'm a Juventus fan myself. My name is Gianluca because my parents named me after Vialli.
Yes, okay.
But I'm a bit sad because they didn't start off very well this year. Do you think there's any hope for them at the end of the season to get in the top spot, the Champions League spot?
I think they are working for this.
They're working for this for sure.
So it's important to give the best to arrive to achieve that goal, because I think it's very important, and it's the story of Juventus that asked for it.
And in fact, on their roster, they have many big names. You know, Bonucci, Chiellini, Dybala. For our young viewers watching, is there any player do you think they should emulate, like a future role model? Who would you say that is going to be the beacon for the future for football?
In our youth sector.
In the senior team, like which of these big players, you know, like Bonucci and Chiellini, do you think that people should look to as a role model?
Of course, they are a model for the young player, and I think the young player have to understand from the career of this player, to understand overall the mentality. It's the most difficult thing to transfer to the young generation. To understand that sacrifice to achieve one goal is important. It's not something that you receive what you want. Give your best, and we'll see every day. So this is very important, and these important athletes show every day this kind of thing to the young player in Juventus too. So
perfect. I think that's all we have time for today. It's been super pleasure to have you here with us today. I hope to have you again sometime soon. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is Gianluca from Lovin Malta. With me again, Mr. Lorenzo Grossi, all the way from Italy. Thank you.